Hello, everyone, and a very good day, good evening, good afternoon, based on wherever you're tuning in from. I know we're a bit late, but we had some logistical issues to tide over before we went live. So, apologies from me and the special guest we have on today um, because it was completely out of our control. But speaking of which, yeah, welcome to yet another Rancho Live episode. I am your host, Divya Mohan, and I am a principal technology advocate at SUSA. So, in today's episode, we are going to bring on another, person from the open source ecosystem to talk about some of the cool stuff that they're doing um, in the field and learn a little more about the work that they're doing, and potentially if you're interested you could ask questions. But coming to the questions part, I know we're all here for knowledge sharing and to learn from one another. So it's a humble request that if you have any questions for our special guest today, please leave them on the chat wherever you're tuning in from. There is a functionality for that. We will get to asking the questions towards the end of our conversation today, and hopefully you have as many questions as I do right now, because the special guest we have on today is Helen Liu, who I had the opportunity of meeting with at the First Asia Summit, which I attended in the month of April. We bonded over documentation, and one thing led to another. And obviously, when two documentation enthusiasts get together, there's a lot to gripe about, especially coming to the state of documentation in the open source ecosystem, which is why I thought, hey, why not bring her on and also have her talk about the perspective that she has to offer as a translation specialist and as a technical writer working with the openEuler project. So please join me in welcoming Helen on stage. Hi, Helen. It's so nice to meet you today, and
Hello.
it's have you on. Thank you so much for taking out the time and appearing on the show. I know it's been a very, very busy day for you.
Yeah. Hello, guys. Hello, everyone. I'm Helen Liu, and I'm from openEuler community in China. To talk about myself first, I'm from the G11N SIG in the openEuler community. So, as you know, G11N means globalization. So we have this kind of SIG to help translate and help to promote all of the things related to globalization and localization in our community. And also, we do a lot of things like social media, website, and documentation structuring, that kind of things. So today, it's really such a great honor to be invited and to join Divya in this special show to talk about globalization, to talk about documentation and open source ecosystem with all of you. So it's quite uh, nice to see and to know all of you here. Yeah.
And thank you so much. Like I said, once again, I know that this is extremely late for you, and you've also had a very long day. So thank you so much for taking out the time and for coming on here, even though you probably really want to get to bed today after the long day that you've had.
Yeah. Because first thing I want let all of you know is that why I had such a long day is because it's a very special day for me and for the members of all Open Euler team. We have a LTS version release today, and we have the release conference this whole morning, and in the afternoon we had so many news to translate, and the documentations we're working on to review them and to let the documentations on website. And we have posters on social media. It's very lucky that that the live show I attend today is the same day as we release the new version. So I'm super excited, and I want to share the details to all of you later. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're very excited to learn about that. But before that, I think our viewers would definitely like to know a little bit more about your journey
Mm-hmm.
in the open source ecosystem. Like, how did you get started, and how did you make your way into open source?
Well, actually, I started to being in the open source course not very long time ago. It's about just about 2 years or 3 years, and before that, I was doing the entirely documentation translation about cloud, about AI. That's because the company I work for is all about cloud and AI, and I translate all of those stuffs about the website. And there's a coincidence that I transferred from the department to the cloud and AI department to the department I'm now working on. That is uh, the computing and uh, openEuler. So that is an open source community. So that's kind of a chance for me to get near to the open source world and the open source ecosystem. That's when I had the chance to attend to global meetings and events and get to know people from all of the different countries who are fond of open source, and also like you who are fond of documentation. I think that's a great opportunity. Yeah.
And speaking of the work that you do, right, you said that you were entirely working with translation and documentation in general. How did you get interested in that niche area? Like, what spurred that interest, and what made you interested in that area specifically? And I know the transition to an open source ecosystem was by chance, but what is that specific thing that you that actually prompted you to take on the documentation and the translation work? Was there a specific interest?
Well, when I was in university, I studied English translation. That is my major. So when I went to work, I first tried to find the work related in this area. And in China, the technology firms, the enterprises who are focusing on technology and the new trends are very popular among young people. And when I had the chance to enter this kind of a firm who are doing new business related to technology, I think that's a great opportunity for me to get involved in a new area, which can use my knowledge in translation and cultural and English literature, and also I get to know a lot about uh, the tech stuffs. I think that's very attractive to me because when I use phones, when I search on media, I see a lot of things trendy today that's all about the tech stuff. So when I had the chance, uh, I started to talk to myself that I should choose a field like this to use my knowledge and also to help me gain new knowledge through the translation process. So I think that is why I get niche into this field.
That's a very I think that's a very nice thought, and I cannot probably beat that when I say that my motivations were pretty much the same. And I think that in my case specifically, when I'm talking about documentation, I had different like side motivations, but my main motivations were to also learn the tech. So I believe I said this somewhere, I don't remember where, but Like one of the ways I actually understand technology is by reading documentation and by reading in general. I am not a person who actually does stuff and then reads the documentation. I first read the documentation and then, tinker with the tech or tinker with whatever we're trying to do. So I know that's like a stark contrast to how people normally operate. People are like, let's dive headfirst into actually operating the technology and then see if we cannot operate it and then go to the documentation. Like that's normally how people function. But it's like what you said. I get to know more when I read the documentation, and I when I just do it by myself, I may know how to probably do the basic stuff. But when you read the documentation, you know so much more, right? You
Yeah.
learn all the things that are deep dives. They are not necessarily like visible on the first operational level. You get to go more deeper into the
Mhm.
product or the project that you're exploring, and I think that's a very, very important point to highlight.
Yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
documentation sort of helps you do that.
Yeah, I
So
think we are in the two different perspective, but we that both leads us to one road,
yeah,
the found of documentation. Yeah.
yeah. And when you were talking about uh, the things that led you to it, and what led you to it was actually the fact that you graduated in English literature and you did study all of that. But when we're talking about what you need in your current job, or in your previous job, really, like when it comes to translating documentation and when it comes to actually what do you say, even documenting a project in general, what are some of those core things that a person who is a documentarian or a documentation specialist would need to know before making their way? What are the skills that they might need to have in this field?
Well, I think for a person who would want to get very deep into this field, there are a few things that we need to focus on. The first thing is that I think you should have passion, you should have love into the things that you are writing or you are translating, because you are the first reader who actually reads the documentation. When you translate that, you have to know what you're actually writing on, and you have to assume that you are a audience, that you're a actual developer or a actual reader from an enterprise or from another uh, just like an individual who wants to learn from the documentation and get started with the project. And with that in mind, you can have the sense of awareness that what you need to do is to make the documentation clear and concise enough for people who are not very deep in this field. They can understand and they can get started. And uh, I think documentation is a gateway to let people into a new project, into a new world. So, yeah, I think that is one way. And another thing is curiosity of knowledge. Because as for me, I just mentioned that my major is translation, and it's all about cultural, and it's nothing related to tech stuff. So when I try to do those translation works, that is very horrible for me to get started to understand, especially those very deep, low level things. So I have to search on Google and ask for people to help to get me understand what they are actually want to talk about and what they want to convey to the audiences, and then let myself dive into the world of those documentations and then make the transitions into another language, and sometimes make the structure. I need to change and reform the structure to let people from a different cultural background to understand what we are thinking. Because in China, people what think differently from the Western world. So what we are very good at is to change the minds, uh, the way they're writing into something that people from the outside China, from the other countries or other cultural backgrounds, they can understand. Yeah.
And I really like that statement that you said, like documentation is the gateway to your project or your product. I really love that statement, and I think it really holds true, because it's one of those first things that you would consume when you realize that just tinkering with your project or tinkering with the tech or working with the tech, it's not really going anywhere. The first thing that you go and see is, hey, is there something that's written about this somewhere so that I can refer to it? So I think that's really a very good quote. And you were speaking of translations, and we know that you're a globalization specialist, so to say. So how many translations are we talking about when we look at the current openEuler documentation? Like, how many languages is it translated into?
Well, for openEuler project, first I'd like to mention that it is just 4 years. So the globalization part we do starts from the 2022, so it's less than 2 years. And now we're trying to do the first step is to get the community has kind of globalized language to let people from outside China to understand what we are doing and to give them a chance if they want to join in the community. So the first thing and most important thing is to provide English. And English is the most comprehensive part in our community that we provide. Besides that, we also have little projects that provide languages such as in German, in French, that kind of languages. That's when we want to have collaborations with companies or projects in the local country, such as in Germany, in French, that kind of country. We do a small amount of translation in that language, but mostly we translate into English. And I think for in the future, our goal, our plan is to have more people to involve into our special interest group, the globalization group, and uh, to make all those things translated into different kinds of languages that people know in the world. Yeah.
And you were speaking of collaboration, right? Like, you were speaking of collaborating with other people so that you get those into particular languages. Now I'm very curious, what is the collaboration platform that you'll use for documenting, and can we like have a maybe you can walk us through the collaboration platform and how you sort of collaborate when you actually globalize the documentation? You can share the screen if you'd like
Yeah, yeah,
while.
yeah. Yeah, okay. Let me share the screen. Can you see it now?
Yep, we can. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So this website is called Kitty. It's I think most of you has never heard of that before. It's a platform, host platform in China, and it's very similar, like GitHub, that we use normally. And we have this kind of a openEuler repo. That's a very large repo. As you can see, we have more than 500 sub repositories, and we have so much issues. And for the globalization part, our G11N group has a repo called globalization. And at this repo, uh, we have first of all the README. and we would want more people to that with different cultural backgrounds to understand what we're doing and what we want to provide to the global audiences. So at first we translated to English, Dutch, Espanol, Frances, and German, and these we have a README file and all kinds of uh, translation tips and terminology, and also the documentations here. We have different kinds of tutorials to tell people how to write a README file, how to make sure the voice and tones are correct, and that kind of things. And to talk about how we process a translation project, you can see here. I have the openEuler project has a CI bot which can automatically send messages to the maintainers at the special interest group to let them know what they need to do. So, for example, when another people in another special interest group, they have a documentation that needs to be translated, they will uh, uh, they will write a message to the openEuler CI bot, and the CI bot will identify the message and automatically send it to the G11N group, and then the maintainers will receive the pull request, and we would distribute the documentation, the translation projects to the contributors at our SIG group, and the people who are able to do this translation project, they would contact us and they will do the translation project. And when they finish the work, they would send a PR at our repo, and the maintainers of the G11N SIG would receive the PR, the pull request, and we have to check the grammar and the whole structure. When all things are correct, we would then merge the pull request, and then the CI bot will automatically send the translation files to the people they need. Yeah, that is the whole translation process.
Right. And I just had a question because we also at the Kubernetes project maintain like 15 languages, and we
Mm-hmm.
like and I know that maintaining even one extra language is a lot of effort. So this is the workflow, I get it, but my one question here would be how so you mentioned that you check for the tonality and the structure and everything, but if somebody else is actually, if it's a language that you do not know about, like say German or French, I mean, I'm
Yeah,
assuming you do not know them,
yeah.
and let's say if they come in and they say, hey, we want to translate um, this piece of documentation, so is it as straightforward as somebody coming and saying, hey, we want to just like translate one page of the documentation and they submit a pull request, or are there like guidelines on how many pages need to be translated before it's actually considered a localization? How does that work?
Actually, we have different kinds of guidelines. For example, we have a contribution guide to that lists very clearly of okay, so here that is a Chinese version, and we also have an English version for this guide uh, to talk to people about what our group, how our group works, and how the translation process can go. And for as for what you said just now, there are you can see here there are over 30 contributors at our community right now, and some of them
Yep.
know languages rather other than English. So if
Yeah.
we have projects that needs to be translated other than English, we would directly contact with those contributors so that they can help check about the quality. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's no automated checking. That's exactly what I wanted to understand. Like even we don't have it. So I was like, maybe y'all have thought of something that is more automated. Like it's still very much a human who is checking the content and the structure and the tonality of the documentation. Yes.
Yeah, most of the work, especially for languages other than English, would be done by manual work. As for the English version, we have our grammar checking and the structure track checking tool. But that can only check English right now.
Right. You mentioned how a typical translation effort works, which is great. Now again, like you said, right now today is the release of it's an LTS release day, right? So there would
Yeah.
have been a lot of translation efforts going on. So um do you sync your translation efforts to every release, at least for the major languages that you have, say like maybe English? You said that English is one of the major ones, is why I'm asking you.
Yeah.
Do you sync those documentations on the day of, or closer to the day, closer to the LTS release day, or is that a wholly separate thing that you do on the side and you do not tie in with every release? How does that process work?
Well, actually, you can see here, this is the official website of our community, and we have the download part that actually lists all the LTS and the innovative versions of our latest release, and also the archives. And we have the documentation part. But when you say the how we can sync all the process, for example, we released the 2403 LTS version um, at today, this morning, and the Chinese version will automatically be synced with the release. So normally people would have the access to the Chinese version first, and when the Chinese version documentation sent to the translation group, we need some time to make the translation process done and make all the check. And sometimes we have to restructure. We have to refine the words and the phrases, and that took us quite a long time. So we the English version might lag behind a bit, but we what we're doing is to make sure that people from a global community that outside China, they have at least they have an English version, or they have a very concise English version part that can help them get started to the new release. And maybe after 1 week or after 2 weeks, the large documentation process is done, and we help publish it on the website, and we promote them on the social media to let people actually get access to the entire documentation. Yeah.
Yeah, and that sounds like a lot of work that you're not doing. Because, and again, it's in a very structured way. Primarily because syncing the documentation is a huge challenge, right? Like things get changed. It's not just during LTS releases that things change with every small patch releases as well. So
Yes.
very difficult to keep that documentation in sync every single time, and especially given that you all are working with different languages, it's even more difficult, because having it in one language, getting it done in one language, that's cool, but doing the same thing across different languages, it's time consuming, and it'll take so much more effort than just for one translation and one language, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that leads me to my next question actually. So what are some of the actual challenges that you face when you're doing this translation work? Obviously the fact that you have to do it under like a time crunch and a lot of pressure probably is one of the challenges, because like you said, you have to start, you have to ensure that with every release you have like some minimum documentation, and then you give them the entire documentation in maybe another couple of weeks. But other than that, what are some of the challenges that you face when you actually have to maintain and create this documentation on a regular basis?
Yeah. Okay. So let me just return back to yeah, stop screen. Okay. I'm back, guys, and talking about the challenges. I think for the biggest part is when we try to maintain all the things that we need to translate. There are always some documentations that are that will be translated by the authors themselves that they do not let us know because uh, just then I said we have a CI bot that helps us to trace all the translation tasks that we should process, and then we distribute the tasks to different contributors, to different translators. But what if they do not let us know? They do not submit the issue to the G11 and SIG to let us know that they have a documentation, and maybe they just use the machine translation. Maybe they just translate them the documentations by themselves because they're just very confident about the quality they translate, and that usually happens. And when that happens, when the professional people sees the translation result, and maybe the people from outside who are native English speakers, they see the documentation, they would have no idea what the documentation is really about, because the whole translation is still in the style of Chinese. The structure is totally different from the English structure, and the words. I think maybe Chinese people would naturally understand what they're talking about, but when that word is directly translated and word by word to English, that doesn't make sense. So we need to make sure that all these translations have to be revised and restructured by the professional team. And that took us maybe a rather long time. And I encountered uh, that sometime when people they would actually try to just write English documentations by themselves, and they are not very good at English writing. Um, they assume that the writing would be naturally understand, and they think the most important part is the coding part, right? They just write the sample code, and most people would actually know what they are talking about, and they just copy the code and try themselves. But that's not the case. When
Right.
people who are not very uh, niche in this field, who are really newcomers, they want to get to know this project maybe then, and then they will decide whether they will take time to get involved, and whether they will take time to go deeper and dive deeper and explore the interesting part. They would use the documentation as a real tutorial for them to go on. So the documentation of this kind of uh, quality would not work for them. So I think that's the biggest challenge for now. And another one is that we need to actually restructure the whole documentation. But the Chinese language, sometimes we ourselves couldn't understand what they are actually talking about. So we have to ask a lot of questions to the developers who maintain the project, and they are very busy. they wouldn't have time to explain all those things. I totally understand that's very natural, and uh, that would need us to search by ourselves. And mm, the searching by ourselves on the internet, because some of the projects are new projects, and that involves new ideas and new features the internet don't have. So when we do search on the internet, that would cause inaccuracies in the translation part. And some people, we have the reviewers when we finish the translation, and the
Correct.
reviewers, maybe they also couldn't find the inaccuracies or the loss of information when they read the translation part. And those small inaccuracies or miss of information, when they collected, that would cause a big uh, information loss. And when people who really need to use the documentation to guide them through the way, that would not work. So I think that are the two most important challenges I face, and that's also what I want to discuss with all of you today, to search for a solution, maybe. Yeah.
um as far as I know, there's no valid solution out there for people who think docs are I mean, code is a replacement to docs. So that one bit doesn't have a solution, unfortunately. Like, people who think that just code is enough, just like writing one or two lines about the code is enough.
Yeah.
I don't think we have a solution to that, except to actually sit and convince them that it's not, because several surveys, and this is outside of open source as well, and within the open source ecosystem, um, a lot of surveys have shown that having good documentation is very critical to the adoption of your project. And having good documentation actually helps you gain more users, and helps you gain more people who will advocate for your project. So the more number of people that are actually able to consume your documentation and understand the project that you're working with, the more number of people you actually might attract to the project in general. So, like, that should be a good case. But unfortunately, when it comes to actually writing stuff, there's also the case of very few people doing a lot of things within the same project, right? A lot of the project contributors, I assume, again, within the openEuler project as well, would be voluntary contributors. They might not exactly be people who are paid to do this as part of their day job. So it's obviously very difficult. Like, I'm sure for some of y'all it would be, but for everyone in the open source ecosystem, that's not the case. Some of us are voluntary contributors who do it
Yeah.
during our free time, and some of us are people who get paid to do it. And the proportion is unfortunately not equal, or it's not even close to equal. So that I'm sure is a challenge. So there's no blaming anyone here, but again, there I think it's an overall I think discussion around sustainability, rather than just uh, talking about docs in a very narrow frame. Because given the way people contribute to docs and contribute to open source, there are very less people altogether, even though
Yeah.
people are interested in contributing. uh, However,
Yeah.
helping them find their niche areas, helping them find their helping them find things that they would be interested in contributing to, that also takes a lot of effort on the part of the people mentoring them and guiding them. So I completely understand, like you said, that there is a reason why things are the way they are, but it would be great if things were different, is all.
Yeah. I just like you said, we cannot blame anyone for what they do, because everyone is contributing to the whole project. Everyone is contributing to the community. that is the most important part that we want for open source. Yeah. So that is probably why we set up the globalization special interest group. It's because people, we want more people, we want to help more people to make things right, to make more people from more global on the audiences understand what we are doing. And if uh, the people right now they're contributing, the developers they're contributing, they cannot uh, do that in a correct way, or they cannot do that in a more understandable way. That is our mission, to help them, to help the documentations available in different languages, to help to bridge the cultural barriers, to let people, you know, understand each other and collaborate more smoothly. Yeah, that's what we do.
And that's a very ambitious goal to live up to, and to work towards, to be really honest. Like, I don't think there is a better goal, because it helps with the overall sustainability as well, right, when it comes to the project that you're talking about. So I know that we are running slightly over time, and I'm sorry for keeping you, but I think our audience would probably like to know where um, they can start contributing, and how they can start contributing to the globalization efforts, or just the documentation efforts in general. How can they reach out to the globalization sake? Maybe you'll have a communication medium that people can join in.
Well, first of all, when people who really wants to, you know, when people just have interest in the openEuler project in general, they would normally have access to the social media accounts like LinkedIn, like Twitter or X now, and YouTube. They can get access to our social media to see the what is happening right now, and what we are doing, the community is doing. That is one way. And if people are really interested in globalization, this part, then we have on our website, we have a uh, a, a, a small website called SIG group, a special interest group. And on that website, we list all the mailing list of the different SIG list. So when you are interested, you can just browse our website and you know, maybe search for SIG or just G11N, and you will find the mail of our special interest group. And we when you send email to us, we would all receive the email and try to connect you. And maybe if you want a more easier way, you can just contact me at LinkedIn. My name is Helen Liu, and if you send messages to me, I will definitely you know, reply.
Yeah, and I mean, I can take the link from you and post it in the description for from wherever we are streaming live right now, for those people who are interested in contributing. But wrapping this all up, thank you so much, Helen, for coming today. I know it's been a very big day and a long day for you, but I thoroughly enjoyed this chat with you, and thoroughly enjoyed talking about all things documentation and globalization today. It's been a pleasure having you on, and I really
Thank
hope we get
you.
to collaborate on something soon, and potentially meet elsewhere soon as well.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for hosting this very nice event and an opportunity for us to talk. I think maybe if uh, the audiences who are interested, we can have similar events in the future for us
Yep.
to talk. Yeah,
Yeah, and we'll definitely think of something to collaborate together. But thank you so much, and
thank
I'll leave you to
you.
get on with the rest of your evening. To the audience
Yeah,
that thank you so much again for bearing with
thank
our
you.
logistical issues. We were a little late. We know that, and It was unavoidable. But thank you for staying on with us, and we hope to see you on another episode of Ranch Alive. Bye, everyone.
Bye bye. Thank you.